have been nuked. Did you know that? Check out Nuked Radio on ucy.tv, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with RadChick and Jules. Stay safe, everyone.
All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is the second day of January 2013, our first live program of the year. And I want to invite all the people listening who are not in the chat room to go to wideawakenews.com, click on the Wide Awake Radio button, and you can join in the chat there. If you want to watch me do this live, you can watch the feed from Justin TV. That link is available in the chat room as well. And once again, welcome to all the Rinse Radio listeners as well as the Oracle Broadcasting radio listeners, as we are simulcasting on both of those networks. We're going to bring on Christina Consolo here in just a minute, the Rad Chick. We haven't had her on for about a month, and we're going to get an update. And she sent me a list of topics that she's going to cover tonight. And there's plenty of things going on besides the charade of the Fiscal Cliff. And for those of you who are waiting for a video on that, I'm going to try to put one out tonight on what the Fiscal Cliff deal entailed, because it is absolutely 100% a screw job on the people of this country. With all this garbage we're hearing about, our taxes aren't going up if we're $400,000 or less in income. Guess what? This was rammed through, governed by crisis legislation that when it's filtering out here, as it will continue to filter out over the next few days, we will find out that the American people have been once again led down a path of a primrose path to a goal that's going to benefit them, is what we're told, and in reality, we're not. Here's a couple simple facts that we're not going to hear from the folks out of D.C., be it red or blue team. 77% of households in this country now are going to pay, on average, $1,600 more a year in taxes. What happened to all the 400,000 or less? Or we're going to go after the 0.1 percenters. We're going to go after corporations. We're not going to have the people of this country shoulder this burden. One more promise that was laid out there by a spokesman for special interest, and the truth works out that we will get to pay for it. It breaks down to $140 a month per household. The list of things that are unbelievable in this bill are, I could talk about them for the next hour, but like I said, I'll try to get a commentary video out on it within the next, I'm going to try to do it tonight after the program. Another fact, $1, this is the big thing. This is the big, I'm going to save this. I'm going to save all of this, because if I go off on a rant here, I won't have time to get all the information Christina wants to bring onto the program. So if you're not in the chat, wideawakenews.com, get in the chat room. Questions you might have for Christina or myself, I'll be monitoring the chat room. I'm sure Christina is as well. Coming up in hour number 2, we have Dinah Snyder coming back on. She had the program where she was treating war veterans for various conditions, and when she was on here last time, we only got about halfway through. It was very fascinating. We're going to continue that interview in the second hour. But before we go any further, let's bring Christina on. Christina Consolo, welcome back to the program. How is the Rad Chick?
Thanks, Charlie. I'm good, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. How are you?
Okay. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I've been sick, and I had to
Everybody's sick. Everybody is sick.
I know.
What? Wow, I'm seeing your new picture. Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I didn't know you were a model. I've only seen the spacesuit with the bubble.
Before I got sick.
Holy crikey. All right, well, here's the deal. If you're not watching on Justin TV, you're probably want to go over there and check it out, because Christina's got a very lovely portrait up there for her image. The avatar that we had before was the spacesuit with the bubble helmet, and now this is an actual picture of her. Unfortunately, it's in a 1 inch by 1 inch on my screen right now. So, but from what I see, you're an amazingly good-looking individual.
Well, thank you.
I'm sorry you've been sick. What's wrong with you?
I've had a whole bunch of things that have just kind of all fallen apart at once. And it's really frustrating, because I'm doing everything as right as I possibly can in terms of, like, eating and, avoiding the things that I know are bad for us in terms of radiation and, rain and so forth. I eat really healthy and I take supplements, and just in the last 3 months I've had just a really severe case of pneumonia, and then I had a couple of teeth that I had like abscesses with, and then I had an abscess on my leg. And it's just like, wow, I mean, why is this happening? This isn't like really, this is like old people stuff that's happening. And, I'm really a healthy person. So it's kind of, it's very frustrating.
This is, I had this conversation today with one of my best friends. His wife has a lot of the same things that I have going on respiratory-wise. And I said, his name's Anthony. I'm like, Anthony, I don't understand what the hell is going on. Everybody I know is either sick or they have a loved one that's sick, and it's completely uncharacteristic for the people that are having these these different kinds of ailments. A lot of them are these pneumonia type respiratory, a lot of liquid in the lungs type of thing. And you talk about lifestyles. The conversation I had with him, because he was a collegiate wrestler, a really in shape individual, and him and I have been running partners for years. And I said, we spend all this time exercising and trying to eat right, and going out and doing these 15, 20-mile runs. And I said, look, we're both in our early 40s, and I said, I can't believe it. I mean, I'm at the point now where a flight of stairs it's like I'm looking at Mount Everest, right. And it's unbelievable what's going on. And his wife is in the same boat as I am. She's always been fit, always exercised, but out of the blue, and out of the blue, I don't mean in the last week or so, but in the last year or so, let's say, or maybe last year and a half, I just have a lot of friends that they went from extremely healthy to extremely not healthy. And what's even more troubling is that when you start down the path of either conventional medicine or alternative medicine or homeopathic remedies, nothing seems, things seem to work for a minute, and then they go by the wayside, and then you're right back to square one again. So I understand your frustration, and thanks for letting me share.
The things that always worked for me in the past don't work anymore. Like, I could just sleep for like 14 hours.
Yeah.
And I'd wake up and I'd feel so much better. And now, like, if I sleep that long, I wake up and I still feel really crappy. And just, no energy. And like you said, stairs. Like, I have 4 flights of stairs to get up to my apartment. And, when I come home with a couple grocery bags, I'm just like, oh, my gosh.
It's depressing, isn't it? It
is depressing. It is depressing. And I know there's probably many, many reasons for it. We certainly have seen an increase in a lot of weird viruses. Just today in Wales, they were reporting a new hemorrhagic virus in fish. It's not just our country, and it's not just our species either. Today, also, there was a report that came out on AP that they're noticing a 75% decrease in stellar seals in Alaska. And another report came out from, I believe it was the BBC, that Japan's birth rate has dropped lower than it's ever been since they started recording it in 1947. And I mean, those are just small examples. I mean, if you look at any of the disaster maps or outbreak maps, hazmat type stuff, there's some weird outbreaks that are going on all over. And I know that could be from radiation, whether or not it's all coming from Fukushima, or it could still be coming from, Chernobyl, because they have problems with the facility there, and the sarcophagus that they put over the facility is crumbling and needs to be replaced. And now today, we learned that in the Isfahan facility in Iran, they are evacuating a city of 1.5 million people.
Yeah. Because
they have extreme pollution. And there's a reactor, or not a reactor, a uranium refinement facility near there, where there were a couple people injured in November, a few workers, and they suspected that there's leaks coming out of that plant. And now that they're evacuating this huge city, I mean, it's got to be something fairly serious.
Well, definitely, and we're coming up on a break here, but I want to talk about a little bit more about what's going on in Iran, and and maybe I mean, when I first saw that story, the first thing I thought was, the computer viruses that we've been, there's been alleged we've been attacking them with, and plus drone flights and all that kind of thing, trying to disrupt their nuclear ambition. We'll talk about that and more with Christina Consolo and more Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath along with Christina Consolo, the RadChick. We're talking about some headlines, some things going on that you're covering. First of all, where can we hear your program and see your information that you're putting out?
Nuked Radio is on UCY TV on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
What is it, UCY TV?
UCY TV. Letter U-C-Y.
Stop. UCY TV. And when? Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Is that new? I didn't know you were. Is this because you were broadcasting on another network last time you were on?
I was on Orion, and I left there in August.
Okay. Well,
to join up at this new station.
UCY TV. Is it video or is it just audio?
No, my producer's been trying to talk me into doing video since the start. She's like, you could just get dressed and put a little makeup on in the morning and go live, and I'm like,
So you're doing it not dressed? Is that?
No, I do it in my pajamas.
Oh, okay. Oh, rough life. I am not getting out of bed to do this. I'm going to lay in bed and broadcast. That's what I want to do. All right, well, UCY TV, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. To 2 p.m. East. And what about your website?
FukushimaFacts.com. And I have links there to my Twitter and to YouTube and to the radio show.
Very cool. All right, 1.5 million people evacuated out of Iran. What is the consensus on what's going on there?
Well, what they suspect is it's from this leak at the uranium enrichment facility. It's hard to tell exactly how many facilities there are. We know that they have a research reactor in Isfahan. That was actually, I think Israel might have shot a missile at that a few months ago. Then there's the one we always hear about, Bushehr,
right?
That the IAEA always wants to get in and take a look at, and they haven't been forthcoming with allowing them to do that. And then they have a production of heavy water facility, another pilot facility for uranium enrichment. But if you look at a U.S. map, there's like 20 different weapon refining areas. And, Iran's map only has 5. The U.S. map has 20. So I don't know how much of that is propaganda or not. You don't know really whose map is right.
Right.
I mean, there's just so much BS from everywhere.
Well, and it's like you said during the break that at least Iran, whatever the situation is, at least they're taking the precaution of evacuating people. And it seems like in the West, well, I guess Japan isn't in the West, but when we have some kind of event here, it's we're going to dump, as we did in the Gulf, we're going to dump all this Corexic on the problem, and then have this propaganda, nonstop propaganda machine convince people that everything's okay. Or as is the case in Japan, they're trying to get people to move back into the affected area. I mean, certainly not taking the precaution of evacuating people, as such as Iran seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S., anytime we've had any kind of accident at a nuke plant, it's usually weeks or months until people find out what's been going on. And by that time, like, they're showing symptoms of exposure, and everyone around them is sick. Or I mean, with the case now with Fukushima, my big problem has always been from the beginning that they shut down all the testing of food and so forth. After the USGS proved that fallout had landed everywhere across the United States, they stopped testing April 5th of 2011. And they never tested again, and the releases have been ongoing, and the same thing with food. Now, here and there, we're picking it up, in dates and nuts, in grapefruit and oranges, in some of the West Coast produce, and then we have all the mutation pictures that people have sent me or have posted on Facebook. And, we need the EPA to do its job, and the FDA, And all these agencies that we're paying to monitor for these types of substances, you know, they just said there isn't a problem and shut everything down. And that's just not acceptable. In fact, Turkey today said that they are going to retroactively measure every import from Japan since March of 2011 because they suspect radiation contamination.
That's interesting. That's interesting because the Washington blog had a story on that was posted originally on March 30th, California slammed with Fukushima radiation, and it was levels that were 500% above normal. Iodine 131 that higher, wait a minute, 500% higher for radioactive iodine 131, higher than anyone else in the United States or Canada, and that's also data from March, so they must be looking, at that same kind of data to go back and look at anything imported from Japan since March of last year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the machines to test this stuff are really expensive. You know, they cost like $15,000 to test food, and there's a few people. There's actually a few, citizen journalists on YouTube that have these type of instruments, and they've been doing food tests, and they're finding radiation in the food that they're testing. They're testing tea and milk and beef. Some of the people have paid, thousands of dollars to send out beef for testing, and they found plutonium landed on the beef while it was thawing in their kitchen.
Good grief.
In St. Louis. This was back last summer. So, I mean, we know it's there. We don't know how much of it is. Because
$15,000 to test that?
Yeah, to have a machine to test it properly. But the EPA has, hundreds of those types of machines. And, it's very unfortunate. So we're kind of stuck and just having to assume the worst, which is what you do. When there's a question of nuclear fallout, you have to assume the worst, because if it's true, the effects are going to be so detrimental to your health.
And it's the last thing they ever do is take the stance of being prepared for the worst, it seems like. All right, we're going to be back with Christina, more Wide Awake News Radio, in just a few minutes, guys. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath along with Christina Consolo, the RadChick. You can catch her program every Tuesday and Thursday on UCY TV, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. East, UCYTV.com. I'm assuming that's it?
Yep.
UCYTV.com. Christina, we were talking during the break a little bit, continuing our conversation about, actually we started talking about Facebook, and so I kind of got sidetracked here. But Gary shared with me that a lot of people have been booted off of Facebook over the last, I'm assuming, a couple of days. I just sent Bonnie a message to find out if we did or not. But this is, and I had to run down to grab my phone so I can message my sister to see if we got kicked off there. But when I came back on, you said they kicked you off. They kicked you off for putting mutated babies up on from Fallujah, right?
Right.
Crazy.
Right. They said I was distributing child porn. So my account was suspended for a week.
Just a week?
Yeah.
That's good grief. Good grief. All right, let's keep going on with, you were talking about Navy sailors that were suing Japan.
Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with depleted uranium. This has to do with the USS Ronald Reagan that was in the vicinity of Japan when the earthquake and tsunami happened. And they offered assistance, and they were parked offshore from the Fukushima plant when the reactors exploded. So they were heavily contaminated with a plume from the MOX reactor, which is just horrible that happened to them. But there's been a couple of videos lately that have been put out. One was there was one that happened when the event happened, and I remember watching it on CNN. I was just completely horrified because I knew that the ship had gone through this plume, and they had all these sailors that were out with brooms and mops, and they were swabbing the deck with dish soap, and they weren't wearing any kind of hazmat gear or gloves or masks or anything. And here we are a year and a half later, and there's now 8 of these sailors that are experiencing great physical pain. They've started a lawsuit against Japan. They're having bone marrow transplants to fix some of their problems. One sailor has developed cancer. Another has severe degenerative discs in their back. They all have thyroid problems. One of the sailors had a baby born with birth defects. Another one is bleeding from their rectum. And these things all happened to them after the Fukushima incident. And there was a video that was posted from one of the sailors on this ship of the decontamination facility, because after you're exposed, whether it's a nuclear, a terrorist attack or an exploded reactor or, a bomb, any kind of biological attack, there's a decontamination procedure that's supposed to be followed.
Right.
And I actually found the PDF of that online from the U.S. military, where it clearly indicates how the room is supposed to be laid out. And I put out a video on this a couple days ago. But you're supposed to, sequester everything. Everything is draped and taped. So it's like these closed rooms where the sailors would go into. They should have stripped their clothing off right away, had high-pressure showers, decontamination, then been checked with Geiger counters, and then triaged and sent to an appropriate facility if they were having any kind of symptoms. Well, what this video showed that the sailors took was basically just this free-for-all going on in this room in the ship, where Geiger counters are alarming all over the place. The guys are walking around. Everybody's wearing shoes, spreading contamination all over the place. Nobody's wearing masks. There's not a single hazmat container or bag or anything in this room. In fact, all of their contaminated vests and stuff are in big piles on the floor. And they're just walking around in here, and they're kind of like, the guys that are filming are laughing because they don't know how to react. They're like, wow, I guess we're dead. Or, they're joking around about this because they knew it was bad, but they had no idea how bad. But they didn't follow any kind of protocol for decontamination. So, it's not just Japan here that's at fault for this.
Was there any explanation on why? Did they just didn't, I was in the military. I remember doing drills when you prepare for nuclear biological type attack. You had to go to a certain level of mission-oriented posture, or MOP, is what it was called when I was in. And if it was exposure of one level, then you went to MOP level 1 through MOP level 4. But I guess in the training that when I was in, we never trained for a nuclear reactor necessarily that imploded. It was more of a a weapon type scenario. But it's hard to believe that they would be in that region when these reactors failed, and then just have the guys up on deck swabbing the deck in their regular work uniform. Especially if you had all this equipment, all these Geiger counters going off, or these detectors of one sort or another, alluding to the fact that there was radiation present. That's unbelievable.
Right. They had fairly sophisticated Geiger counters, too, not scintillators, not the ones that would have broken it down by isotope. But the Japanese government did know. In fact, Any News published a story today that they issued an alert to all of the politicians and officials that lived in northern Japan that the reactors were going to explode and that they needed to evacuate 100 kilometers or more away from the site. But that ship was closer than that, and they didn't get a warning, or it was ignored. Later they did pull the ship away. It stayed off the coast of Japan for a period of time. I really don't know how long, but these sailors started having symptoms within a few months, and they were very hesitant to bring up this lawsuit, understandably, because it would, probably characterize the Navy as playing this down and, cast a lot of suspicion on our government, too. But Japan knew how bad. Japan knew how bad it was, and they played it down. And our government, we know from phone calls, from the Freedom of Information Act, phone calls with the NRC, they knew how bad it was.
Right, and one of the times you were on the program previously, you talked about how Hillary Clinton went over there to make sure that the commerce between the U.S. and Japan flowed without anything impeding it, such as checking material coming in from Japan.
Right, and now we check, they check outgoing exports. I think 1 out of every 10 items is scanned for radioactivity, and we've gone off and on with the beef imports were stopped, and then they started again. And, there's just no clear testing being done on anything, seafood or meat or anything coming from Japan or anything coming really out of the Pacific Ocean. And when we do get results, it's from tests that were done 6 months ago or 12 months ago, like the radioactive tuna fish that Stanford had reported on. It took them 6 months to tell the public.
A full year after they did.
And that's just not acceptable.
What do activists like you run into when you question these agencies on why is it taking a year after the incident to get these kind of reports on tuna, and then you find out that they're 6 months old to boot?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are they saying? We're doing the best we can. I mean, what are the answers that are, these are supposedly working for the people? What are you just getting stonewalled when you talk to these people?
Getting stonewalled. I've tried for weeks now to get a hold of somebody at NOAA to find out whatever happened to the radioactive seal tests. They found there were like 100 seals that they found, ringed seals. This was back last summer, that were losing hair and they had lesions. And when they performed autopsies on these dead seals, they had brain tumors and all kinds of tumors in their body. And they said that the seals did have radiation, but not above what they would expect to find in the ocean. But they hadn't tested for anything from Fukushima yet. And we've never gotten the results of that. We were supposed to have gotten them in February of 2012. And so I called NOAA, and the guy who's in charge of the study, his name is David Kelly.
Hold on a
second.
second.
Sure.
Hold on. We'll bring up what'd you say, David Kelly?
Yeah.
We'll talk about David Kelly and NOAA and Fukushima, and finish up the first hour with Christina Consolo when we come back after a few commercials. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath along with Gary Hendershot. He was taking part in the conversation during the break, and Christina Consolo, the RadChick. This is our final segment with you, Christina, and we're talking about the effects of radiation, and you had said during the break that it's cumulative effect, and more evidence keeps coming out that yes, it's in our food, it's in our water, it's in our air, and it's also, just like the Gulf became a non-story, at least in the mainstream. What are the current conditions of Fukushima? I mean, what state you mentioned? Chernobyl was losing its containment dome. What's the status on these reactors that have all failed?
Well, their status is basically the same. We don't know where the corium is, which is really concerning that nobody talks about this except once in a while Michio Kaku will come out and say, oh, it's liquefied uranium. It's never been seen in the history of nuclear energy. That's what's going on in reactor 2. But then there's well, what do you do about it? What is it going to do? How long is it going to be in that state? How long is it going to be releasing radioactivity? We need really smart people all working on this problem and trying to figure out, is there a way to contain it? Because there were ideas that were thrown out at the beginning, and Japan didn't have the money. They didn't want to dig under the reactors like Chernobyl. They didn't want to, build a sarcophagus or anything like that. It was too expensive. They've had trouble even keeping workers there. And, because it sits right on the sea, everything that's dumped on those blobs in the ground and on the spent fuel pools, everything leaks down and goes into the ocean.
Is that still there?
And we're starting to see dead coral around Hawaii and turtles with lesions and fish with lesions, and then, the fish that have already measured radioactivity. And we had radioactive whales. Just the first few weeks into Fukushima, there were 6 whales that were caught around Japan, China, and Russia that were highly radioactive because they feed on plankton. So they were taking in huge amounts of plankton, which had soaked up these, isotopes. So it kind of skips in the food chain if you think of it like going from a small animal to a big animal, because here's a big animal that feeds on something small.
Right.
So, it's just a long-term problem, no solutions, no technology to deal with it. And
that's the question I had, too. Is the solution, or is the treatment of these still dumping seawater onto them? I mean, is this for over a year and a half they've just been dumping more and more seawater on them?
Well, they have to, or the fission will restart, and it'll be even more radioactivity leaking out of there, or they could have another explosion because of like hydrogen buildup and things like that. I mean, so it's such a complex process. What they probably should have done is just sprayed cement over the entire complex right at the beginning of this, and sprayed everything, the trees, everything where the stuff had landed. But instead, it just keeps blowing around and getting, released into the atmosphere and then blowing over here and raining out over North America. I mean, that's really the only thing I can think of. And the other thing that was suggested was digging a huge moat and expanding that moat into the ocean and filling it with boron and concrete so it would leak into that and be absorbed by it instead of just running into the ocean unabated, which is
Unreal.
What it's been doing for almost 2 years now.
And so there's no firm plan going forward to contain these meltdowns. They're just going to keep dumping water on them and ignoring them. I mean, there's got to be some kind of, in Fukushima they built these massive containment domes. Don't they have a plan in place over in Japan to do something similar?
Well, they put a tent over reactor 1, and that was to keep in like gases. Miss Milky the Clown on YouTube calls it the circus tent.
Yeah,
you can't really see what's going on inside. And they're building like 100-foot long wall underneath reactor 1 to try to keep some of that from going in the ocean. But I don't even know how workers can go down there with how radioactive it is. They've tried sending in robots, and they've tried doing all these things, and everything keeps breaking because it just fries the circuitry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an ongoing problem. That's like you said, this could be centuries. And you talk about whales feeding right on plankton. Well, everything in the ocean is the base of food chain is plankton, and so everything eventually ends up be it fish that are eaten by sharks that are so forth and so on are exposed. What about the spike levels here in the country? You do a great job of monitoring all over the country to alert people when there's high radiation levels in their area. Are we still seeing, certain times where we get spikes in certain areas around the country?
Right now, the biggest spikes that we've had in the last few days, and we've had a number of them, around 200 counts per minute, which is double alert level, is in Hawaii. And I don't know what to attribute that to. It's been going on for a few days. The Geigers there keep alarming. And there's a great new website on Facebook called radwatch.info.
Radwatch.info on Facebook.
They post graphs from all over the country, and I know a few people who are trying to work with web designers on putting together a better map of people with Geigers that are doing individual measurements. And eventually we need to come up with a plan to certify these people too, so everyone trusts their results. I mean, I know that they know what they're doing, but not everyone will take them serious, especially people who work in the industry. And it's being kept from them too. I've had a couple of nuke industry workers that have contacted me recently and said, I had no idea how dangerous my job was. No one's ever told me any of this. I didn't know radiation could do any of this to people, that it affected your immune system, and that it could cause eye problems and heart disease, and, and it explains why all my coworkers have cancer. And this was an email that I got from a crane operator who works with spent fuel pools. And, I've heard from a physicist friend of mine, too, that when he worked in the industry, he wanted to take classes on the health effects of radiation, and they said, you don't need it for your job. We're not going to send you to that. We're not going to pay for it. And he worked with the spent fuel, and he worked on decommissioning the Fermi 1 reactor that melted down in Detroit in the 60s. And they told him he didn't need to know that.
Unreal. And just so, just as another slap in the face, I started off the program saying I'm going to get a video out about this Fiscal Cliff, but it's ironic that one of the companies that managed to secure a bunch of tax breaks is, of course, General Electric, the creator of so many of these lovely devices that are failing and then covered up. Mm-hmm. All right, what do you see coming? What's your biggest concerns now going into 2013? Since we're starting the year off, is it still Fukushima? Last time you were on, we were looking at a bunch of different reactors in the United States that were potentially problems. What are you spending your time researching and studying now besides Fukushima?
Well, I've been watching a lot of the earthquake activity that's been going on, and some of it's reported, some of it isn't. And just in the last few days, we've had like hundreds of earthquakes in the Bayou Corn area where the sinkhole is, which is double the size that it was the last time I was on your show, by the way. It's now 9 acres in size. And there have been earthquakes there like crazy because the salt dome is collapsing underneath there. So there's some nuke plants in that area just north of Baton Rouge. That plant has been leaking underground from its pipes. So any of these plants that are in any earthquake-prone areas, which is now, basically the whole country, from how many earthquakes that we've had lately, having them in all these weird places, you have to start worrying about the equipment failing and the emergency systems not working properly, and the stuff going into our drinking water from these plants, from the pipes leaking underground.
Yeah, and it has been weird, the amount of earthquakes that we've seen, on the East Coast. There's a lot of people who are concerned about the New Madrid fault line. Have you heard any talk on that? I mean, that's, we talked about that in the past as well as a potential.
There's been some strange things showing up on the seismographs. Recently, there's been a lot of like vibrations being detected. It doesn't look like an earthquake, but rather than the lines being straight, you can see that there's definitely kind of a squiggly line that will go on for a duration of a couple hours and then it'll stop. And that's not fracking. It's something else, and it's also being picked up on these arrays that they use for underground nuke testing. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty has these all over the world. There's these arrays that are actually spread out underground for several miles where they can pick up very, very sensitive vibrations in the earth, so we can tell if anybody's doing nuke tests underground, even though the U.S. just did one a few weeks ago. And those have been showing activity, and I've talked to a couple geologists about that, and they have no idea what's going on there. It's a very, very strange anomaly that's showing up on the seismograms.
What is there? Do they speculate on what it could be, potentially? I mean, or they just say we have no clue?
They're suspecting that it could be some kind of frequency, whether it's man-made or it's celestial. It's coming from outer space, affecting our planet and causing it to vibrate, or it's something that's being generated by HARP technology or Tesla technology. Those would be the two top things, and off the top of my head, that could cause something like that. But no, we don't know the cause. We don't know what's going on with that. That's scary stuff. If you say the only thing that normally, maybe are there? Give me this info on this test, the U.S. underground nuclear test. Yeah, a few weeks ago they did a plutonium detonation. Oh, I don't remember now if it was in Nevada or Utah, but it was reported like 3 days after the fact that this test had been done, and they said it was a small amount of material, and they just wanted to see how it reacted. And Iran actually condemned the U.S. for doing this test because we're all over them for their nuke stuff, and here we are blowing stuff up underground and not telling people.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I missed that. I didn't see that story anywhere.
Yeah. I'll find a link and send it to you.
Yeah, I'm curious on that. So there's potentially, if it's the same kind of vibration they're picking up that is with a nuclear test, is there a chance we're doing more of these nuke tests?
Well, if it was a nuke test, it wouldn't be sustained over a period of hours or days like these vibrations are. So, all you can really do is just, if you live in an earthquake-prone area, just have your preparations, and most of all, make sure everybody in your family knows what to do, and that you know where the nuke plants are in case they melt down. You have to have a plan of maybe evacuation for short-term or long-term based on the severity. That's the earthquakes don't usually kill people. It's the houses falling on them or the nuke plants that melt down afterward. So, people who live in areas where their construction isn't reinforced, like St. Louis, that's very close to the New Madrid, they have a lot of old brick and mortar, stone and mortar type houses. They don't have, earthquake, stuff built into them. Yeah. So they're at high risk for a lot of destruction if that would happen.
Well, I appreciate you coming out here and giving us information. And I'm looking at the clock, and we are out of time for this first hour. I didn't hear the music, though. I don't think Gary heard it. I don't think it was sent to him. Oh, there it is. Christina Consolo. All right, let me give you time. UCY TV Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. East, ucytv.com. That's where you can check out her program. Christina, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.